Welcome to Stockton Alive. Now, here's your host, the one and only Knodt.
Hey there, Mr. Dustin. Good afternoon to our vast listening and viewing audience there, out there in the greater Northern California, San Joaquin County, Stockton, French Camp area. We not only is Stockton alive today, I think we could say Stockton is sizzling today.
It's on fire.
I've been fortunate enough to be indoors most of the day, but I was informed as I walked into the great KXVS Voice of Stockton studios that it was 111 degrees or something like that out there. It was forecast, I thought, for 106. But anyway, so yes, we're alive and sizzling.
I think it broke a record also.
Yeah.
I saw.
What's that?
The weather today. I saw
we broke a record?
I saw on Alex Breitler's Twitter earlier.
So is it the hottest day for this year or something?
Yeah.
I mean, for this date in this year? Or
yeah.
what? Now, the other thing, speaking of heat and records, we smashed the record for triple-digit years in the summer. It had been 18 or 21 or something like that.
This comes from Alex Breitler from the Stockton Record. We all know Alex, his Twitter page. Today is Stockton's hottest day since July 25th, 2006. The airport hit 111 degrees at 3:50 p.m.
Wow. Per
the weather service. That's from Alex Breitler. And I guess we beat out Las Vegas, Reading, Phoenix, of all-time highs today.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Those are some pretty... To beat those people
From
out is pretty
Breitler,
significant.
Yeah.
Phoenix, I think throughout the course of an entire year, Phoenix has about as many hot days or hottest days of the year in the country or triple-digit as anybody. Even more than Las Vegas, I think. Of course, I have lived in Las Vegas. Also, I went to the coldest football game of my life in Las Vegas. People forget that a desert not only is hot, it can be very cold. It's high altitude, and if you get low temperatures and the wind blowing, you can just freeze your butt off. It happened to actually be a UNLV game against University of the Pacific. I was living in Las Vegas. Also, the freshman quarterback and punter of that UNLV team at that time was Randall Cunningham. So I saw him play as a freshman in college, a true freshman.
Punter and quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he might even played some. My memory is he even played a little bit of defense from time to time, and I think he played special teams sometimes too. He was just an incredible talent at that point. But of course, we always get sidetracked by weather and sports, and of course that's good because I came in with next to nothing today. No, not really, not true, but it sounds good when you say, I've got nothing today. And I've got my usual tools of ignorance with me. The hidden inside the coat plastic protector of my pens, nerd pocket thing, and then I've got my whiteout, which I don't think I'm going to need today because I don't actually have many notes today. I do have materials here, and we do have a topic. Today's topic is actually primarily RTD, and I'm not going to do that too often because just because I happen to work for RTD doesn't mean our vast listening audience really wants to hear about RTD all the time. To most people, transit's not exactly the most exciting subject in the world. However, we have legitimate news about transit and RTD, which of course, and I'm sure that KXVS is well aware of this being the voice of Stockton, that we did inaugurate back last Thursday, August 24th at 5:54 and 5:55 a.m., the United States' first 100% electric bus rapid transit route in the nation using all 100% electric buses. Now, the type of buses we use is the Proterra Quick Charge bus. A couple things about a Proterra Quick Charge bus. First of all, Proterra is an American company. They're in Greenville, South Carolina, and they're an American high-tech startup. One of those startup types where they used to criticize years ago, criticizing the Obama administration for picking winners and losers and putting money down black holes to pay for to pay for high-tech startups and clean energy things that didn't work. Fortunately for us, Proterra is one of those success stories. And let me explain briefly how they got started because it's pretty interesting. Back in the mid-'70s, when a lot of urban centers, and this is also relevant to us talking about downtown Stockton, which we do all the time, many urban centers had reached the point of fairly dismal decay in the urban core of the central business district. Denver was one of those. And many people thought, well, gee, somehow, some way, we've got to inject new enthusiasm into downtown and bring people back, pedestrians, and get people actually shopping and buying things downtown. Now, Denver, of course, is a little bit bigger more dramatic city in many ways than Stockton, in that it's in Colorado. I think it's the largest city in Colorado by population.
Isn't isn't the public transportation in Denver pretty nice though?
Well, it is pretty good. And actually, I'm going to tell you really kind of what turned it around, which is what led to the Proterra story. That's why I'm going to. That's why I'm going to go into this. But no, that's good.
I've heard it from like people listening to sports stuff. And
no, it's true.
But yeah,
they have great. They have tremendous transportation.
Yeah, light rail
now.
System, I believe.
What started it all, however, this urge to rebuild. I want to say it's the 16th Street corridor. Pretty sure it's 16th Street or Avenue, which happened to be a major. I don't know if it's north, south, or east, west, but it's a major crosstown street in downtown Denver. I know it eventually went to Union Station, where Amtrak operates, went by some old derelict hotels, got into the old urban core, and got somewhere close, I think, to the state capitol building. Denver is the capital of Colorado, and it does have the state capitol building pretty much right in downtown, something like what you'd see in Sacramento, for example. And they do have kind of a park. It's not a mall like Sacramento's with a bunch of buildings, but they do have a parkway that extends out maybe 3 blocks from the capitol building. But anyway, how this all leads to Proterra and then to RTD is that, and the rebirth of Denver transit system, is that they decided to have electric buses operating on a very tight frequency, like every 90 seconds or something like that, up and down this shuttle on this 16th Street or Avenue. And what they got, how they actually started that, amazingly enough, is this young entrepreneur basically took a standard transit bus, 40-foot transit, or maybe it's 35, and he literally took all the mechanical diesel engine and transmission out of it, put in a big, powerful electric motor on the axle, and just jimmy-rigged a bunch of batteries together. I think these were like 4 or 5 truck or bus batteries, which I want to say are 24 volts instead of 12 or something like that. And they managed to get the service running. So it was not only frequent, fast service, it was quiet and non-polluting. And that was all revolutionary stuff back about, this is about 1976 maybe, or 78. Well, this is one of those things, unlike the K Street Mall in Sacramento and the mall in Fresno, the Fulton Mall in Fresno, and other places where pedestrian malls didn't get off the ground and never really got going and were not successful. This one was highly successful. The combination of good, convenient, quiet, wonderful transit coupled with great pedestrian walkways did catch fire. They did get the retail back. Then hotels got gentrified. Then Union Station got some remodeling. Nothing like what it is today. I'll get to that in a moment. And then that did 2 things. It jump-started Denver's downtown. 3 things. It jump-started Denver's downtown. It led to a tremendous rebirth of transit. Now they've got light rail all over the place. They've got commuter trains. They've got commuter trains, full-size commuter trains running frequent schedules from Union Station to the international airport that was built there about 11 or 12 years ago. And Denver now is considered one of the great public transportation meccas of the United States. Another unlikely place where similar spurt and growth of transit has occurred is Salt Lake City. But getting back to now the Proterra story, so I don't lose track of it. This whole thing with stringing up these batteries and running an electric motor and running a full-size bus works pretty good. But batteries were then and still not quite good enough for the real rigors of a real transit route that operated all day long, many stops over many, many miles. But because of the success he had in Denver, and I don't remember the name of the guy, he got the idea to do what's called quick charge buses. And that's what we have. A quick charge bus has this big pod about 12 feet high in the air. It has this big black thing called a charging head, which looks something like an old-fashioned iron that you would put on your cast iron stove back in the days when you used to heat an iron to iron your clothes, but it wasn't actually an appliance like electric or anything. It was just a big block of iron. People forget irons are called irons because originally they were a big block of iron, and you heated them up and you could iron clothes for 3 or 4 minutes before you heated them up again. Kind of like you used to dip a fountain pen into a bottle of ink, which I'm actually old enough to remember. I don't think today's younger generation ever realizes people ever did that. So eventually they started this high-tech company called Proterra, Proterra, which, if I'm not mistaken, in Spanish means pro-earth or pro-land or something similar to that. So, or for the earth or for the land. So anyway, Proterra finally got this prototype out about 8 or 9 years ago and sent it to Foothill Transit in Southern California. They took a chance on it, made some national headlines. didn't work great, but it worked good enough for the buses to primarily get through their schedules most of the day without any problems, and people kind of enjoyed the idea of riding an electric bus that's very quiet and very smooth, and there is virtually no smoke, of course, or anything. And so along comes RTD. We try to innovate all the time. We helped, as I said in a previous show, I believe we actually helped pioneer for the whole United States of America the diesel-electric hybrid manufactured bus with our friends Gillig in Hayward, and now with a new plant in Livermore, and relocated to Livermore, I should say, and the original big General Motors, not the one that's kind of been salvaged and taken over and rebuilt by the government, and then their wholly owned transmission subsidiary Allison Transmission. We pioneered diesel-electric hybrids for California and then the nation. Well, Proterra got this going with Foothill Transit, and then we decided to take a bite. So back in 2013, we started operating the 2 nearly handmade prototype buses from Proterra, which are the ones that kind of have this rainbowish kind of kaleidoscopic paint scheme that you'll see downtown. Although the newer ones kind of have a similar paint scheme, but not quite as over the top. And the newer ones have are primarily focused on our company colors of maroon, gold, and black. But anyway, we started operating these 2 buses with our one quick charge pod in 2013, June of 2013, with regular service commencing in July of 2013, fiscal year 2015. And those buses were pretty good, and we already could learn things from Foothill, and they'd already updated some of the stuff. But the key word here is they were prototypes. They cost $1.2 million a piece, which is almost double what a diesel transit bus would cost. But they were purchased by the California Energy Commission. But we gained enough experience, enough confidence in running those 2 buses that as Proterra began to grow and start manufacturing buses in a more kind of mass-produced sort of way, buses aren't really mass-produced quite like cars. You have assembly lines, but they're not continuously moving quite at the rate of speed that you see a car assembly line. But anyway, so we decided to put in, and you can, one of the key things too is you can get grant money and federal money for zero emissions vehicles much easier than you can get money just to buy a conventional. Well, you can't even use a conventional diesel bus in California. You can't buy a conventional diesel bus in California anymore. It has to be either a hybrid, electric, or CNG. And hybrids and CNGs are over 90% emissions free. So we were already about 90% emissions free before we ever started this. But we then decided to take the plunge. We've ordered or now have 11 or 12 of 15 new full-size 40-foot manufactured Proterra buses. And this is what they look like if we can get the close-up camera on this. There it is. That is what is now operating on Route 44. And I'll describe Route 44. We talked about this a little bit in the last show, but I'll talk about it again more today. The Route 44 is what RTD calls a Metro Express route, which is actually a derivative of the type of service known as Bus Rapid Transit, BRT. This is where you run a specially dedicated fleet of buses, which we're doing, with a special paint job, which we're doing, with some technical innovations like better AV systems, wider doors, in our case, boarding without a fare box. People can pile on or off any of the doors that are open. They have to pay a fare before they get on the bus, and they can be cited for not having a valid ticket. But in any event, Bus Rapid Transit is specially branded buses running with beautiful stations, such as we have right over here by Pacific and Walnut. We have stations by Lou's Chicken Bowl, and then the new coffee place, which name escapes me right now. But we have those beautiful Gold Wing shelter stations with the fare vending machines.
Dutch Brothers?
Dutch Brothers, thank you. That's our station there. We were there when it was a vacant lot. Now they've kind of joined us, you might say. Could even call it transit-oriented development. But anyway, so that's Route 40, of course. In fact, I rode Route 40 here to the show, as I often do, and I got off at Lou's Chicken Bowl to walk over here, and I will walk home from the show after it's over with. I rode here from downtown. But anyway, so we put the electric buses on Route 44. Now, the Route 44 is a South Stockton route. It starts in downtown Stockton at our DTC, Downtown Transit Center, and it operates to Minor Avenue by Ace, and then it goes down Airport Way all the way to 8th Street, where it zags over eastbound on 8th Street over to B Street, and it goes all the way on B Street, all the way into deep southeast Stockton to the industrial area where there's Boeing Way, and it takes Boeing Way about a mile east to Frontage Road 99 West, where it then stops in front of a beautiful new PG&E Regional District office building. And so now this is very interesting. It wasn't exactly all planned this way, but this is how it turned out, and it's terrific. We now run all electric buses, very innovative, very high tech, very futuristic, and they wind up serving and operating to a PG&E office district facility where they do energy. This is even more ironic, where PG&E conducts a lot of energy efficiency training. So we're now running electric buses that use PG&E power from our quick charge pod all the way down to a PG&E building in southeast Stockton by Arch Road and Highway 99 near the airport. Now, I started to tell you about the quick charge and never finished it. There's a big pod up in the air on a 12-foot tower with this thing that looks like an iron, which I mentioned. And then when the bus gets within about 50 feet of that bus stop at our downtown transit center, where we have all the individual boarding slots by routes, all off the street, of course, is our own huge, beautiful boarding area. Looks something like an old-fashioned train station, actually. If you put train tracks through there, you'd have a train station instead of bus slots. But anyway, 50 feet away from the charging station, the driver puts the bus in park, and a computer takes over. And the computer drives the bus in at about 2 and 3 miles an hour to where, as the bus gets underneath this thing, the charging head drops down about a foot onto a groove on the roof of the bus and slides into an upstanding thin piece of metal called a blade. And they dock together or mate, and then all the electrical juices flow through and the bus can be charged in 10 minutes. I forget the exact electrical specifications about voltage and current, but you can do what's called a quick charge in 10 minutes. And that's why we call them quick charge buses. And these buses can then go about 25 to 30 miles in about 2.5 to 3 hours on one charge, which is enough to do the loop to South Stockton and back with a lot of juice left over. Probably could theoretically miss one charging and still do the second trip, although we're putting it right on the edge. Now, the other thing that makes this interesting is that they don't have to have a full charge and they don't have to do the full time. This technology is allowable where you can do a partial charge for a few minutes. And you can just get and there is, of course, obviously a charging gauge on the dashboard of the bus that shows the driver what percentage of the battery is charged, just like your cell phone shows you, oh, I've got 78%. Well, the bus does the same thing. So, Foothill had routes before we did, running on electric buses, and a few other cities. We were the fourth in the nation, by the way. Second in California and fourth in the nation when we implemented the original prototype buses on routes 55 and 60. 55 serves Weston Ranch, and 60 goes out to Pixie Woods on Fremont and Monte Diablo. Anyway, this bus, as I said, goes by the A station on Aurora, then goes over to Minor Avenue, and then down Airport Way to 8th Street, to B Street, down to Boeing Way, comes around to the frontage road and loops around back on Transworld Drive to Qantas and loops around a place called the Venture Academy. There's a huge number, thousands of students. Also the San Joaquin County Office of Education. Also the Employment Development Department of Stockton with their building, which is this particular building is centered primarily on disabled people. And then we are going by several other key places for which we'll eventually have bus stops. We're going by a big Trader Joe's facility near B Street and Industrial. And for those that saw the headlines last week about Amazon coming to Stockton with a huge plant that's going to employ at least 1,000 people, that appears as it's going to be located right on this bus route. And we've already got riders from Trader Joe's, but now we could have all this warehousing people coming from the new Amazon. The bus also on Boeing goes right by the historic, iconic, and spectacular Stockton International hat maker, Dorfman Pacific. We might eventually have a stop for them. So anyway, we, little old RTD of Stockton, San Joaquin County, have become the first 100% dedicated all-electric bus rapid transit route in the nation. There's roughly 15 or 17 cities, something like that have bus rapid transit routes, the biggest of which is LAMTA, which runs about 6 or 7 of them, including a very famous one of Wilshire Boulevard. And they have one that goes by the Staples Center. In any event, though, we're the first to dedicate all of the buses on the route, 100% of them, to electric operation. That was last Thursday morning. And continuing on now. Now we're going to, and we are still running electric buses most of the time on routes 55 and 60. However, we're going to take the Route 80. This is going to phase in over the next few weeks. We're going to take the Route 80, which operates all the way from the east side of Highway 99. It's a little loopy area, looping area. Let me try that again. We operate a loop, a rectangular loop, in the area known as Section and Oro, and we come up Mariposa Road by the huge BNSF Intermodal Railroad Yard. Come up Mariposa Road all the way to, which then turns, I'm sorry, I said Mariposa Road. Come up Farmington Road, which at Mariposa Road, which is where the Walgreens and Kmart is in southeast Stockton, turns into 8th Street. And the route goes to B Street and then winds its way on Martin Luther King over to Wilson Way and eventually into downtown. And eventually the 80 goes all the way to Madison and then Acacia by Dameron Hospital and then up Pershing to Robin Hood and to the malls down in central Stockton, the Weberstown Sherwood Mall, Robin Hood Plaza, and the Stone Creek Village area. So that route is going to go electric here in the not too far off distant future. Now you're saying, oh yeah, okay, no big deal. You got electric buses running. Well, that's true. But when you get to ride one, you'd be amazed. They're until they hit a speed of about 30, 35 miles an hour, when you get a bit of a whining sound, they're almost perfectly quiet. They have no smoke. By the way, our buses do not smoke. Our diesel-electric hybrids are nearly almost 100% smoke-free, and they're 90% zero. They're 90% emissions-free buses, and they're fairly quiet operating also. And so we are replacing really clean buses with super clean buses. We haven't had buses that knocked out smoke or anything like that in decades. It's been about 20-something years since RTD had conventional buses that had any kind of smoke coming out of the tailpipe. Our buses for years have been almost completely non-smoke, and they've had very low emissions, and they've had low sulfur diesel and all that. So there's a little bit of complicated factor, however, in this. As I mentioned, there is a quick charge that's necessary. We have to build the schedules to do that. And we also have state-mandated laws for driver breaks every so often. Not necessarily, they don't have to have a full lunch break, but you have to give them breaks throughout the day that would be equivalent to a full lunch break and some 15-minute breaks like a normal office employee would have, except you can prorate these breaks into scheduled layovers. The good news is the scheduled layovers needed for the driver's mandatory break time just about equals these quick charges. However, having said that, it's still not that easy to build the schedules. You still have to do a lot of intricate timing to allow a schedule to operate like a normal schedule and still have all these charging times and still make connections and transfers to other buses. The other thing is we're going to be, when the 80 goes electric in the next couple weeks, as we phase in electric buses on that route, we're going to have multiple routes operating from the same charger, which we have 2 chargers now in downtown Stockton to downtown Transit Center. We have lane A and lane C have chargers. Well, obviously, you have to have some kind of priority. You got to time these buses so they alternate downtown coming through instead of coming at the same time. And most of our system over the years have been designed to have all buses arrive about the same time so we could transfer people between routes very conveniently. But now we have to have alternating schedules for the routes that are running with electric buses because you can only have one bus charging at the same time. So yes, we had to write up a protocol showing what buses get which priority at which charging station at which times of the day and all that. And yes, that gets very complicated, and we haven't even fully implemented all this yet, so we got some challenges ahead. And we'll see how it all works out. But I do know it will work out because we have to make it work and because it's important that we run good, frequent, reliable, convenient service that is also timed to allow passengers to make their transfers. What makes this a little more complicated is we're going to add more electric buses as part of our route restructuring coming up in January of 2018. We haven't yet chosen exactly which routes. But there's some more things that have to happen before that can happen. We're going to have to, after just getting all this implemented and kind of perfecting it, we're going to eventually have to move the quick charge of the Route 44 that occurs every 20 minutes all day long at the downtown transit center. We're going to have to move that out to South Stockton, where we're going to build another charging station at a place we're going to call Union Station. which will be at 2nd Street by Union. It'll be at Union and 2nd Streets, which is where the Union Pacific Maintenance Railroad Yard is, which is where the Ace trains used to be stored, by the way, in service before they got their own beautiful maintenance facility out there at West Lane. West Lane and Alpine, where you have the huge, big, beautiful rail maintenance facility. So it's considered to be the highest tech rail maintenance facility in North America. Now, when you say North America, that includes Canada and Mexico. And the Canadians have some pretty sophisticated commuter rail routes and some great transit. But anyway, the point is, when we get this charging station up in South Stockton, we have 2 more bus rapid transit routes coming online in January of 2018. One of them will be the Route 49 Martin Luther King Corridor Express, which is going to operate all the way from the Turnpike French Camp Road and Martin Luther King intersection by the General Dollar Store, all the way across Martin Luther King Boulevard to B Street, where the Caltrans building is, the District 10 District Office of Caltrans, where it'll turn right onto B Street. And we'll go to 8th Street and then turn left and eventually do a kind of a triangular loop to Mariposa Road and back to Martin Luther King. Also providing a convenient stop near the Diamond Walnut plant. The end of the route would, by the way, be where Walgreens is near Kmart there at the intersection of Farmington, 8th, and Mariposa. That route is going to go electric once that charging station is up. And then our challenge is we have to take the 44 and move it down, and we're going to charge the 49 and 44 on alternating layovers at Union and 2nd Street in South Stockton at a beautiful new transfer station that we're going to construct down there, which would be something like the Hammer Triangle station up north in terms of about the size, and a little bit smaller than that actually, but something like that. And then when that happens, we're going to do that so we can use one of the 2 charging stations that is now being used by the Route 44 will be available for these other buses and other routes. This is why I have few guests on this show, Dustin, because I'm so busy working on this. We don't have time to call or text or email anybody to get a guest in here, which we know we need to do because we know the vast listening audience and television streaming audience would like to see me share my mouth and talking with other people, which I guarantee we will be doing. I did mention, of course, we have 2 new bus rapid transit routes coming. So we should probably show you our bus rapid transit network that we're developing to provide great frequent service to large areas of Stockton. And there it is. Scrolling from the top where you have Hammer Lane on the top, east and west. Then north and south spine route is the Route 40, which comes right up our beautiful Miracle Mile, which I rode to get here on a 60-foot articulated bus, I might mention. And then you go down where the airport corridor route is, all the way down to the PG&E building and the Arch Road 99 on that south loop there, which is Arch Road and 99, Frontage Road 99 West. And then in the middle you see 2 yellow or gold-colored routes. Well, the middle one will be our Route 47 Midtown Corridor, which will start at Franklin High School in the east, work its way Fremont to Wilson Way to Minor to downtown, to our transit center, then on to Weber Avenue, by the new courthouse, and out to Lincoln and Weber. And we have 3 great destinations at Lincoln and Weber for that route. We're going to have the DMV, the San Joaquin County WorkNet office, and the Children's Museum. 3 major destinations for transit riders, not to mention the whole waterfront warehouse complex with Nena's restaurant and boats and docks and the marina and the boat launching area and all that. You could all get to that by frequent bus service. These new bus rapid transit routes, by the way, have a 15-minute frequency in the daytime and 30-minute frequency later at night and on weekends. And that's much, much better than many of the other routes throughout our system. So, to put this map up there one more time, we'll also, there we are. The lower route there is the one I mentioned, the Martin Luther King Route 49, which I already mentioned will go from Edison High School in the west to Kmart and Walgreens in the east. That will also operate every 15 minutes. I should mention that the Route 49 and 44, which are going to share that charging station, are also going to connect to one another on pretty much every trip all throughout the day with just a few minutes layover, much as the Route 43 and 40 connect and transfer between passengers up at the Hammer Triangle station, as we like to call it. And the great thing about this network is we're now going to be covering a large portion of Stockton with 15 and 20-minute service, because we have 15-minute frequency on the 40, we have 15-minute frequency on the 43, a 20-minute frequency on the Route 44 on the airport corridor, and we're going to have 15-minute frequency on both the Route 47 Midtown corridor and the Route 49 Martin Luther King corridor. And surely you must have a comment about that, Dustin.
It's pretty interesting because it seems like a lot more buses and a lot more public transit around the nation is going electric, and it's great to see Stockton ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact that we're also pioneering all these bus rapid transit routes. Most cities are just starting their first one now. Mm-hmm. We're months away from having 5 of them.
Wow.
And they've all been very successful, I might add. As we mentioned in a previous show, the Route 40 annually carries over 1 million passengers. The entire bus rapid transit network for 3 of the last 4 years has carried over 2 million passengers. Just those 3 maroon-colored routes have handled over 2 million passengers annually. We expect with the 2 more routes coming on that's going to also create a connectivity boost of ridership. You'll have so many more routes connecting, going to so many more destinations and pairs of destinations from one part of town to another. We have fast, frequent express bus service, because a lot of Stockton's routes have been operating in the more recent times, like the last 10, 15 years. Most of Stockton's routes have operated either 40, 45-minute or 1-hour frequencies. Here we're talking about a whole network of routes running every 15 and 20 minutes and 30 minutes on weekends. And so you can literally get on this system, right now, you can get all the way from South Stockton, where the Venture Academy is, all the way to Walmart Walmart up in northeast Stockton on Hammer Lane, by Hammer Lane and Holman Road and Highway 99. You can make that whole trip by transit bus, in less than an hour. In the old days, if you put together 3 or 4 different routes running on their normal frequencies, that trip could have taken 2 hours or more, and you'd been sitting around waiting for transfers quite a bit. Whereas this is all fairly seamless, and it goes pretty quick. Yes, you could drive there faster a little bit. Now, the Route 40, by the way, for trips just on the Route 40, our bus route gets you there faster than you can walk to a parked car, drive to the destination, park again, and get to your final destination. You can actually do it faster by our bus, which is one reason why the ridership is so spectacular on that route, which at its peak did up to 5,500 trips in a single day. On a typical weekday, it's now more around 4,500. The average at one time was more like 5,000. Now it's about 4,500. Still incredible ridership for that route. In fact, Dustin, as myself and our manager of marketing, Terry Williams, took a random trip to the mall the other day, because the next thing I'll talk about is we're going to have a mall circulator route running free of charge to the public, connecting malls during the holiday season.
Oh, that's awesome.
But to get to that point, we had to go talk to the malls. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, why should we drive and park? We can take our Route 40 from our downtown transit center, go to the mall, and come back. And, of course, we did, and the bus ran right on time, basically to the minute, giving us 13 minutes to walk to our destination. We arrived at the office that we needed to go to with 4 minutes to spare, being super punctual. But the greater point of my story is coming out of the malls after we'd met with the one at the Sherwood Mall person. At random now, we walked over to the stop that's at Delta College, where you just walked from today, by the way. Mm-hmm. The stop to the BRT route at Pacific and Yokut's at the Delta College side of the street, where you have the main entrance to Delta College. We boarded that bus at random at 3:45 p.m. last Wednesday afternoon, I believe it was. And it was a 40-foot bus instead of a 60-foot articulated, which was disappointing to me. And I had a reason to be disappointed, partly disappointed, I should say, because we had to stand. It was a standing room only bus trip. There was 40-plus people on that bus. Now, had it been an articulated bus, we would have all had seats that had been very comfortable and spacious. But as it was, we still got on a bus. The point is, there's ridership on this route. People think that we run buses around just because we're required to, and just because it's our job, and this and that. And but we have real ridership out there, and the bus rapid transit routes themselves do fairly spectacular ridership at times. The first ever articulated trip ever taken, probably the third time I've repeated this story, but what the heck. On a Tuesday morning at about 10 a.m. I think it was 10:15 a.m. from the downtown transit center on something like February 18th, 2014. We get on the articulated, I think it was 2015, I should say. We get on the articulated bus, And we just take it round. My colleague and I, we boarded independently, didn't even know each other were on the bus at first. Rode round trip to Hammer Lane and back, from downtown Stockton to Hammer Lane and back. 118 passengers boarded that trip. And that trip was either full or standing room only a couple of times on a 60-foot bus. Now that's when their levels of ridership were a little bit higher than they are now. And we can talk about why ridership has decreased a little bit on another show. But I just wanted to make sure we tooted our horn on this. The other thing I'm going to mention now, of course, is we're going to have the mall circulator trip. This is breaking news. I'm probably breaking news here a little prematurely today, but we are going to have, so I won't give all the details. It's been approved, and we're working on the service. We don't have it all nailed down 100% yet. But starting about September 30th, we're going to operate a smaller bus, free of charge, that will connect, and I won't go into a lot of details since it isn't really public yet. You're hearing it for the first time here, I believe, on Stockton Alive. KXVS, the voice of Stockton, the great megaphone of Stockton. Anyway, tower up. Got to get our tower up there. This route will operate anyway from Sherwood Mall to Stone Creek Village, loop back around to Sherwood Mall, and then over to Weberstown Mall. And it'll operate approximately every 15 or 20 minutes. It'll be completely free. It's going to operate weekends starting September 30th. And then, if all goes well, we're going to operate it 7 days a week, starting around Black Friday. And this will operate all the way through the rest of November, December, and into January. And then we'll evaluate the ridership and see how much longer we want to continue operating it. But just think, Dustin, if you drive up and during the Christmas rush, now we know that there's been a drop-off and, people are doing a lot of online stuff. But I think at Christmas time, people still like to go to the stores and see the decorations and do a little window shopping.
Yeah, last-minute shopping.
Yes, and actually see what they're going to buy.
Yes.
Having said that, I think there's still a future for that to some extent. We're going to help it anyway. But just imagine, you drive and you get the perfect parking spot. You nail this spot in front of Barnes & Noble or Sears or Dillard's or Macy's or Dick's Sporting Goods or Stone Creek Village. And you don't want to give up that spot. And you don't want to drive your car and guzzle all that gas to go like 3/10 of a mile to then repark in another crowded parking lot. You will not have to do that because RTD is going to have its, I think it's called the RTD shuttle after our mascot RTD. RTD Shopper Shuttle or Holiday Shuttle or something like that. So that's coming. But in the course of setting up that service and talking to the mall people who are very enthusiastic and happy about all this, by the way, we rode the Route 40 for a real business trip. And it was beautiful and it was great and it was a great transit. We didn't have to drive a car and we didn't have to worry about crazy drivers or road rage or protesters or any of that stuff. We just got on the bus downtown. In 16 minutes, 14 minutes, we were at the mall. Walked over, did our business at one mall, walked over to the other mall, did our business, came back out to Pacific Avenue. I think with only a 4-minute wait, we caught the next trip back to downtown. It was right on time, and we got downtown in our usual, from the mall to downtown varies between about 14 and 16 minutes. You basically can't drive your car any faster than that. And if you're driving your car, you got to park it somewhere and walk from the parking lot, so. Of course, depending on where you're at in downtown, you have to walk for the transit center. But it's still easier to walk to a place and get on a bus than it is to actually go to a parking garage and get in your car, which, think about a day like today now. You walk out of your air-conditioned office, you walk a block or two, and you get right onto our air-conditioned articulated bus. Compare that to walking across 2 or 3 blocks to your parked car that's been baking in the sun. Now, even if it's under the shade, it's still in the hot temperatures. And still gathering thermal heat, baking in the sun, because you don't really want to, in this day and age with car, the way things with security and stuff, you generally keep your car fully locked. There were some cars for a while, and Prius had this, where they had a little fan inside that was solar activated. They kept your car, I don't know if they still have those or not, but most people have to get into a sealed car, hermetically sealed car, which probably is 120 degrees inside. Start it all up and then pray the air conditioning starts working in time before you die of suffocation or heat stroke. But with transit, you can just walk a block or two and jump on our beautifully air-conditioned bus, sit down, and you've never lost much of your air conditioning that you had in your office. So those are all the exciting things coming up. Now, of course, as I mentioned, none of this is simple. The federal government wants to know what we're doing, and the state government wants to know what we're doing. Taxpayers want to know how we're spending the money and how we're doing all this and how we justify and who's going to ride and how many people are going to ride, what hours are going to ride, which neighborhoods are going to ride. So, of course, that means we must do a transit survey. bingo, we have a transit survey. And you'll see it in a moment here, obviously. It'll pop up on, there it is on the big screen. We kept it simple, as you can see. There's only 4 questions on that side, 2 on the back side, and a nice handy place to make your own written comments. We're going to be distributing these very aggressively all throughout Stockton later this week and all next week. We've actually already started it in a few places, including the Full Moon Riders last month. We distributed some surveys. I've been to some meetings around town. We've already collected, I think, almost 70 of these surveys, but we're going for hundreds of these surveys. In fact, Dustin, yes. I'm going to put KXVS, the voice of Stockton, on the spot and leave some surveys here for you and the staff to fill out. Okay. By the way, we have no problem with who fills it out or what they say about us. We're thrilled to get people fill out this survey who've never ridden a bus, may never ride a bus in their entire life, may not like bus service or transit. We don't care. We want them just to fill out the survey and be honest, because we want to show the government that we're engaging the public, which we are trying to do. There's all the ones we've collected so far at just 5 events. And we've got about 12 events to go. But even better, there's going to be a high-tech online version of the survey. I don't know if it's going to be a so-called monkey survey or not, but it's going to be something like that. And the beauty of those, of course, is they can be tabulated immediately by a computer. This particular one, we're going to scan it into a computer and then ship it off to some professional consulting people to actually tabulate all the results. So I don't have to sit at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning tabulating results of these surveys. Of course, I will be reading especially the comments on the backside, of course.
That sounds like fun, tabulating them.
Yes. I actually am very curious about what people say in here, by the way. And I'm also very curious where we do have them, where the people have written out, for example, this one here, where they've written out the handwritten comments and say something about the, looks like, oh, where did I go here? There it is. I got reversed here in the mirror and put the wrong thing, and there's, how am I not getting that on camera? I'm not being very confident at this. Okay, this way will be for sure. Okay, there we go. There are comments at the bottom of the page there. I would say probably out of the 70 or so surveys, probably about 30 people filled out comments. But there's a lot of other answers to questions that we're very thrilled to have on there. I'll give you an example of what one of the questions, besides the usual stuff, who you are, where you live, and do you ride, and what zip code do you live in, and do you ride the bus or not, and how many, if you so, how many times you ride, and if so, what routes do you ride? Besides all that normal stuff, we have some very interesting questions. For example, of the 2 options listed below, which do you prefer? Trips that operate more often that require a transfer of buses, or a single through trip operating to the stops that you want less times during the day? And what we're basically asking there is, would you rather have fast, frequent service, even though you have to transfer maybe between one bus or another to complete your trip? Or would you rather wait around longer for a bus, but when you get on the bus, it takes you all the way where you want to go? So far, apparently, the results on that are about half and half. Now, the other question we asked people, but I'm not sure if we explained it well either, is if you had a bus that ran frequently, how many blocks would you walk to catch it? And if you had a bus that ran less frequently, like say once an hour versus every 15 minutes, how many blocks would you walk to catch it? Generally, what happens on that, Dustin, throughout the nation and throughout experience that we have, people are willing to walk much farther to a bus that runs very frequently because they're willing to invest in the walking to the bus if they're not scared they're going to miss the trip and stand around for a long time. So, generally speaking, people will walk 6-7 blocks for a bus that runs every 15 minutes, and they may not want to walk more than 2 or 3 blocks for a bus that operates once an hour because they don't want to invest the risk of walking out there in the heat or the rain or whatever, like today, for example, when it's 111 degrees, to walk, say, 6 blocks, and then just when you get there, the bus pulls away and you miss it. You've already walked 6 blocks, you've missed the bus, you haven't gone anywhere. Of course, that's one of the difficulties with getting people to ride transit, is being able to time routes, catch buses, know when they operate, where the stops are, how you get from one part of town to the other, all of which is very hard to do. You have to educate people, and you have to have orientation sessions. You have to go to people's businesses and places of work to explain that. We have a whole generation that's grown up without knowing how to read timetables because the public really hasn't emphasized transit service until fairly recent years. But the good thing is the pendulum is swinging back. Now, have you had much experience? You can tell me whatever you say is fine with me. Have you had much experience riding RTD at any point in your life?
Actually, I never rode it in Stockton. I've only public transportation probably in Reno. That's the only one I've ever done. But public transportation, it's depending on the size of the city, it's very convenient. I think. Yeah, because if it's too big of a city, it's hectic.
Right.
But if it's like Stockton or Reno size or what else, another city, maybe Portland or Seattle, it's perfect.
Right, and Reno, by the way, has improved their system fairly dramatically in about the last 10 years.
They have that big transit center downtown.
That's right, and they have bus rapid transit routes also. I can't remember if they're going electric. They might be going electric with what's called extended life battery buses.
Okay.
I should point out we're using the quick charge Proterra buses.
Okay.
And I think we talked about this once before, but I'll briefly mention it again. The other major competitor and the other type of electric bus that's out there right now that's making a dent in the marketplace is an extended range battery bus. What we mean by extended range is the battery can last nearly all day and can go up to a couple hundred miles on one single overnight charge with a super duper battery. However, the only catch with this, and I don't mean to be too political here, but the buses that are doing this, that are getting the market share, are called BYD buses, and they're designed and owned by, or I should say the company is based in China. Now, to their credit, they've built at least one or two, I think it's two manufacturing plants in the United States of America. But even with all that being said, they're still a Chinese company. By the way, the BYD stands for Build Your Own Dreams. I have a real hard time with that slogan, especially when it's not even an American company. But in any event, so we're going the American route with Proterra, and I can't blame the other people for trying the other one. Now, Proterra is working on an extended range battery. Proterra is talking about building, by the way, in fact, they are building a manufacturing plant in Southern California. Right now, the only one they have is Greenville, South Carolina. And this is great news. They've already moved their headquarters to the Bay Area.
Wow.
Their national headquarters are now. And I just went completely blank. It's not San Mateo. I forgot what city they're. Burlingame. Proterra is now based, their international headquarters is based in Burlingame, California. And they are also working on, they're talking about building their own super spectacular battery plant in Northern California.
Interesting.
There's more to that than I can tell you right now. So that's something we'll break that news if and when we get a chance to mention that. The other thing is Tesla could come into all this at some point with batteries that they're producing in Reno, and we know they have a distribution plant and a finishing plant, I think it is, in Lathrop. I know they have a plant in Lathrop. I just don't remember exactly what they do in Lathrop. I think they do some final packaging and manufacturing there.
Yeah, the battery place in Reno should be opening by next year, I believe.
So that could come into play. The other thing I should mention, our diesel-electric hybrid buses, as I mentioned earlier in this show and several times before, are proudly built by our favorite bus company, Gillig Brothers, formerly of Hayward, now of Livermore. We think Gillig buses are the finest transit buses made in the world, and I say that totally, 100% sincerely. I think in fact, they're sold out for 3 years, essentially, their assembly line. That's why they moved to Livermore, to build a bigger assembly plant. But not only are they going to start manufacturing, articulated buses, which they couldn't do, which is why we bought the Nova articulated buses, were manufactured in North State, New York, up in North State, New York State. I think it's Plattsburgh where they're being built, or near there. That was the city I couldn't remember when I was talking to you on the show last time. But Gillig may also start to try and manufacture electric buses. So we're hoping, and the other part of the news conference we had, we mentioned the news conference on the last show, and it was a week ago Friday we had the news conference. We not only mentioned in the press conference and then had the big kickoff event of running the first all 100% bus rapid transit electric route in the nation, we've committed to go all electric by 2025.
Wow.
You get funding for buses from the federal government fairly regularly, about every 12 years. Or you get cycles of 12 years of funding. You're supposed to replace the buses every 12 years is what I'm trying to say. You don't do them all at once. You do them alternately throughout years. But we figure by 2025, the remaining diesel-electric hybrids that we have now will be up for replacement. In fact, many of them were up before that. But we're saying we will cycle through enough buses through the normal replacement process and through normal attrition and retirement that we could be all electric by 2025. But we're hoping that Gillig will be a part of that. And we're also hoping maybe by then there'll be some battery manufacturers providing some extended range buses with local manufacturing. So So there you go. All RTD every day, all day long, all the time. But now, as it's sizzling outside, we're giving you emissions-free buses with beautiful electric propulsion and great, comfortable, refreshing air conditioning inside.
Yes.
So I hope that you learned something today as our electric train leaves the station here. Even though I'm a total steam locomotive advocate, I also recognize electric power is the way to go for transportation for the most part.
Well, Nate, it's been fun as always. And how can people get these surveys again?
We're going to be distributing these surveys at outdoor tent events, and we're going to have online surveys that we'll be broadcasting through social media and advertising.
Awesome. And you've been listening to Stockton Alive with Nate Knodt. Thank you for listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Until next time.